All right, so in this lab, we're going to take a look at how to use basic authentication. So basic authentication is technology which has been out for a while, and we are going to play with it, but let's just say that it is not the best way today to ask for username and password. I will show you what basic authentication is. So here is a website that I know is using basic authentication. See this pop-up right here? Maybe you've seen this on the internet before, and every browser is going to create this pop-up slightly differently. It's asking me for username and then password. Username and password. If I type in the wrong username and password, okay, then I get authorization required. And this is an HTTP code that gets sent back. If my username and password were correct, that will get put into the HTTP header, and with every request to this server and to this directory for any image or any web page, I have to resubmit my username and password. Now, I'm not doing that with my hands by typing it in, but the browser remembers what I typed in and it resubmits it. So obviously we're opening ourselves to some security issues. Basic authentication is sort of the old way of dealing with passwords. By the way, the new way of doing passwords is to have a hash in the database and then to ask you through HTML. Give me your user, HTML, give me your password. When you submit, I take your password, put it into some kind of a hash, compare this hash with what I have in the table in the database, and then I issue you a session ID cookie. And again, for as long as you have that cookie on your browser, and the cookie has to be resubmitted, just like basic authentication. It has to be resubmitted with every request for every image, for every JavaScript, for every page, but no longer is the password traveling. That's the big difference. Okay? So even if someone catches that cookie, they will only be able to exploit your current session, which is bad. Okay? But they will not know your original username and password. So we take similar precautions for cookie session as we do for basic authentication, where you resubmit password all the time, and that is we use SSL. Because when you use SSL, the information gets encrypted. Okay, so let's see how this is built inside of Apache, and for us, it's actually going to be the next assignment. Okay, so first of all, we're going to create a few users on our system, and these users are going to be used as part of our demo here. I am not creating operating system users. Okay, a big difference. Operating system users can log in through SSH. They can log in at the console. They have a lot of rights on the system. You don't want to do that. Instead, I will navigate to where I installed Apache, and I installed Apache, I believe, as user called Knoppix. Yeah, it's right here under Home Knoppix Apache. In the bin directory, so within the binary files, programs that we compiled, we have this file called htaccess. This program will allow us to create users that can be used for web authentication. Web authentication. Authorization is what they can do on the system. Authentication is the process of identifying who they are. So let's go ahead and run this program. htaccess. Okay, quickly we're told that, hey, you can create a password file, and if you create a username afterwards, will ask you for a password. Or if you're doing it in batch, or maybe you have a PHP program. You're running PHP program to register someone on the website. Okay, then you are running a system command inside of PHP, and you can use a password file that you will append the user to, provide the username and the password that they chose. Okay. Now, here is why sometimes people do choose basic authentication. Let's say you don't have a database. Let's say that this is going to be just a file server that you're using, and you want people to upload their spreadsheets and their important PDF files, and you need a really simple way of securing this directory. You may create some kind of a generic user account and just share it with people. So whenever you try to do that, the first time you'll have to log in. Okay? So the right tool for the right situation. So let's do that. We're going to create this particular password file. We'll do that under just under the Apache Apache directory. So let's do that. We'll say htaccess -c, because the password actually does not exist yet, the password file, and create this under home Napix Apache. And we'll call it member. What do we call this in the lab? We call it members.txt. Okay, members.txt. And the first user we'll create is going to be James. Notice that the program asks me for the password. So I will put lowercase welcome. Okay, lowercase welcome. Okay. If I was to preview the file I just created, I can see James, but I cannot see the password. It's not clear text, which is really nice, right? So you can store these passwords. Can I break into this hash? Yes, I can. Okay, and John the Ripper will do it just fine, and fairly quickly we'll find my dictionary password welcome. But your PHP script could first validate the strength of the password. Did you include a letter of uppercase, lowercase? Did you include a number? And then only allow saving the password that's secure. Okay, so far we simply have a new file with a single user. Let me add another user, and this time I will remove -c because now we're just appending to the file. So I'll go ahead and create also John with the same password welcome. And now let's preview it again. Okay, John, I've typed in the same password, and yet the hash is slightly different, which is great. So that way we can't figure out some of the patterns. All right. Our next task, after creating the accounts, is to create a directory that we actually intend to secure. You could secure the entire server if you want to. Most likely, you really want your index.html to be public and only certain directory to be hidden. So let's say that you are uploading images in this directory, you see, and you want to protect those images. If you have no PHP files to work with, then that session ID cannot be recognized, you see. So this basic authentication still has some uses. It's just the right tool for certain situations. So I'll go ahead and create a new directory. Let me move it right here. I'll create a new directory inside of htdocs. Make new directory. I'll call it important. This directory, I'm going to change the security on it to 755. And what this will allow me to do, okay, let's do this. The important. So the owner of the directory, Napix, can read, write, and execute from here. Others can read and execute. So that way Apache user who is running the server can log in and actually read the files. And finally, right here, let's see. Oh, we're changing the ownership of the directory to Napix. You have to do that if, for some reason previously you were running something as root. so that you have to do that. But because I created the directory as an Apex, then this is already applied here. Okay, so now the next step, and let me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to resize this particular piece. Okay, that's better. So now what we have to do is we have to go ahead and edit the Apache config file. Two ways of including this configuration in your system. One is I could put inside of the directory called important a hidden file .htaccess. So that way you can delegate this user creation work and this protection to developers, web developers. Or if this is really important, then you can embed this config inside of your main config file. So we'll do it both ways, just so you can see how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and go inside of the config file, and I'm going to go to the bottom of the file, and I'll create a location. So if a location is requested on my Apache server, and the location includes the important directory. Okay, if there are other directories inside of important that are covered, okay, but if this pattern is found important, then make sure to post auth name. So BasicAuth is now the technology we're using. So auth name is just the title, members only, and authentication type is basic. This module, if you went to the documentation in apache.org, you'll find that you can use different authentication types. Basic authentication is what we're discussing right now, is just one type that this particular module supports. So basic authentication is what we're doing, and specifically we're using a user file authentication from home Napix Apache members.txt and require valid user. You could have a set of users and groups file and then say require valid group. Okay, so just depending on how you like to deal with this authentication. Now I save. Next I have to restart the server, right? Because when you change config, you have to restart the server. To do that, I'll go ahead and log in as root here because I think we're running right now on port 80. And I'll say go to home Napix Apache bin Apache control and restart. Now I'll open my trusted iceweasel browser, localhost / nothing. This works fine. This is a public page. And / important. Okay, I have to now log in. And if I log in as James with password of welcome, I hit OK, and I can see the directory. There's nothing here, but I could have a website here, I could have an image, I could have downloads, all kinds of things. Okay, so that's the first part. Next, okay, what I want to do is I'm going to move my authentication. We're going to deal with this IP stuff in a moment. But now I want to move the same authentication from my config file to htaccess file. Okay. Okay. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to edit my config file again. This time, I want to get your attention here to this place where we discuss files which are protected, right here. First of all, access file name is a specific important type of a file name which allows us to delegate certain directives from our core http.conf to a remote section of the website. When you enable this technology, you are getting a performance hit. Because imagine what has to happen. If you have a website inside of important, inside of day one, inside of week one and year one, you have maybe 5 directories deep. Every image that gets hit in that directory, Apache has to check for htaccess in every directory before it. Okay, if you enable this site-wide, then every website has to recursively be checked for an htaccess file, whether it exists. You see, so there's going to be a performance hit when you do that. So if you care about performance, most people would, okay, but if performance is more important than your web developers having this access, then stick your basic authentication configuration in the core config file, because then Apache knows that only in this one directory, in this location, you care to do this stuff. But if you'd like to delegate some of this, then you're going to enable this access file, and I'll show you in a moment with allow override how we're going to enable this. So now we have an access file that we chose, but notice the trick that Apache will do here. Whenever you see, when there's a file match with regular expressions, when we start with escape.ht, so it can be .htgoogle, .htsite, it doesn't matter. We will hide this file. You will not have access to this file, right? So that's what this particular section of Apache means. And notice how it's using the deny, what we'll discuss in a minute. It says, follow order of processing this rule by processing allow first and then deny. And by the way, deny from all. So who's going to be allowed? Nobody, because you are denying from all and you do not even have a list for allow. Okay, so that's how we hide htaccess from every user. But as we go down, okay, as we go down, we need to enable or override the default behavior of Apache and allow .htaccess. And so in the instructions here we have, it doesn't tell you exactly where to include allow override. But basically, we're going to do that under document root, which basically will allow us to use this technique in any section of our website. So let's see, htdocs is right here, document root, okay. And notice under directory it says, hey, allow override none. Further, if we go down to our root directory, it'll say allow override none. Okay, so we are going to go to our root directory under htdocs and we'll say allow override all. When you do that, you're allowing just a little bit more than basic authentication. You're allowing other tricks. So we will just say allow override auth config, and you can provide a list of things you allow overriding. It most of the time means some kind of a performance hit on the server, but important functionality too. So that's what we'll put here. Then I'll go to the bottom of my config, and I'll copy what's inside of location. You see, I no longer need this config if I'm going to use htaccess. So I'll take this config out. Now I'm going to install inside of important a .htaccess file. .htaccess. I'm creating a new file in the important directory, and here I'm going to go ahead and paste in authentication name. This is basically the title of it when it comes up, type of authentication, and then everything else is the same. Now when I save, I will go ahead and restart. Whoa, oh yeah, so I have to restart as root. Now when I go here and I refresh, okay, so you're going to have to restart the browser a few times here. Localhost / so localhost by itself works fine. I'm now important. Okay, I get also a pop-up. But this time, this information does not come from the main config file. It comes from .htaccess, which means that as a web developer, I can now do this trick of saying, okay, copy important and create a new directory. Maybe call this directory my files. And so now if I try to navigate to my files, okay, what did I do here? And I effectively closed it. Oh, okay. So ls on home, Mapix, Apache, htaccess, my files. Oh, is that what it is? Sorry. Okay. My files. Lowercase my. Okay. Lyles. It's getting late. Files. Okay. Notice I didn't change any config, and this new directory is also protected because the htaccess file. Okay, the htaccess file, it doesn't have its own, the name of the directory anywhere. It just has the location of the users to obey. So you can copy htaccess to multiple directories, and it'll work from the same storage of users. But it is recursive, so you just put it in the main directory. Okay. All right, so let's just go back for a moment to this deny and allow section. And to do this well, I'll go ahead and edit my config file here. Okay. Allow and deny. So allow override allows you to include or enable new features on a specific location or directory. But now we have allow, we have first order directive and then allow or deny directives. This section right here is our document root. So who should see our document root? Well, I would like you to start with the allow list and then follow the deny list. The order is important because if the shorter list is to deny, right, then you may then you may want to say allow from all and then deny from for these three people. Okay, but depending on which list is shorter or longer, you may choose to do this in a different sequence. But once you establish the sequence, then you're going to say allow from, and now I can specify an IP address. So notice I could make my website unavailable from 127 this address, or I can say make it unavailable from the entire network. So sometimes what happens is you released a new website and you're getting hacked from some IP address in China. Okay, let's just say that unless someone is using the Tor Firefox plugin, right, where they fake their IP address, you really don't care if this hacker or this entire network has access. So then you just basically cancel it. You can say deny from just 172, and so it'll do a match on this. And so that is a large part of the internet that you're denying access, but maybe you choose to do that for some reason. And so then it doesn't matter if they have the right password, if they know the URL, it just says no access, access denied. Okay.
Showing through the entire address for 172?
Right. So it doesn't matter. It'll do a basically pattern matching. Yeah. But it'll support different syntaxes, and if you're a network administrator, then you can provide some smart ways of doing that. Or you can say deny from, and then you provide one address, then another address, and another address, and so you can append multiple addresses. In our lab, what we will do is, first of all, you have to look at the address that your local card is configured with. Now, this is my local address. Okay, so I could say, and by the way, on your systems, if you are using the NAT configuration, which is the default, then you will say allow from 1, which will allow it from your IP address, and then deny from all filters everybody else. And this is syntax for IPv6, Okay, IPv6, which is the new version of IP, which is configured on these NAPIC systems. Okay, so what I want to show you is if I go to my document root, so let's go to htdocs, and here I will say here's directory htdocs, and here I'll say allow from all, but by the way, deny from, and I'll paste my IP address here, save it, then restart, and then I'll, whoops, well that didn't work as expected. Okay, that didn't work as expected. So let's see, we must be connecting via via this protocol. Let me try this. Okay, so what happened here is on my local system I have two protocols configured. I have IPv4 and IPv6. So if I connect via IPv6, then that address is different and it looks just fine. Now, your server, you will know whether you have IPv6 or 4. Chances are 90% is that you have IPv4 configured. Okay. So, but this is what your website looks like to people, that you are denying access. It just says forbidden. And it doesn't matter which part of the website I go, you know, the password is not overwritten. You first are denying access to the htdocs, therefore nothing else is going to show. All right, so that's the how secure is that? So this is based on Apache's ability to recognize IP addresses. Right, right, yeah. So this is a secure method. Having said that, IP address doesn't tell you much about who it's connecting to. So Apache itself is going to use these allow, order, deny for internal modules. Maybe you've noticed when we worked with the status module, let's see if I can navigate there. Extended status, and there was a section right here. You see the /server status, we enabled it, but then there was the deny from all, and then only allow from, and it has this fake .example.com, which doesn't really exist. So the first thing that you will notice if you leave it in is that you can't get to status module. So Apache will use this security to secure its own things. You can type in here localhost, and then only the administrator who is on the console of the server can actually use module status. So if nothing else, these particular ways of securing the system can help you to manage your server in a safe way, because you know the IP address of your workstation, and then you can say deny from all, allow only from my workstation. All right. Okay, so we have a few minutes to play with that today. If there are no other questions, if there are, feel free, and we'll take a closer look at those.